Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam Live. Ask is the acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. That's one thing I hope that this show and other episodes invite you to do is to learn a little bit more about life and yourself. And don't just settle for maybe the answers that someone gives you or something you may read in just one textbook or something online, but read multiple things to really sort of encompass yourself and your mind, get it wrapped around just understanding what it is about life. I found this helpful in my life is just understanding a lot more has helped me get through life and feel more confident and feel much better. And a lot of that came from, well, just studying negotiation, especially with my stint in real estate and a little bit in life insurance. I understood that it's it's not all about winning. It's not about getting to the championship. It's about those small wins. It's about finding a little victory, even if maybe you didn't win. So that brings us into this episode's title, The Art of Negotiation, Win-Win Outcomes. Great negotiators don't dominate, they collaborate for mutual value. Negotiation isn't a battle, it's a conversation where clarity, confidence, and curiosity win. Whether you're talking contracts, careers, or conversations with your kids, negotiation is everywhere. I remember in real estate, for instance, I would just simply have conversations and understand where someone was coming from, maybe their intent to sell their property, and understand kind of the root meaning of why they were selling and what they were looking for as far as an outcome and what seemed like the best case scenario in their mind. I already knew what the best case scenario was in my mind, and that was just to create another satisfied person, to be able to do exactly what they asked me to do and to make the transition and transaction occur without a lot of hiccups or without feeling like they've lost something. I even found myself several times where, man, if you kind of dared to not represent your client, I would learn something about them simply by just asking everyday questions. Like, oh, do you work local? Or what do you do for a living? That's not really a contract negotiation tactic or it doesn't get into the contract per se, but it certainly would share with me how bad they wanted to live in a specific area or why they wanted to buy this particular home. And asking those simple questions and probing with true honest investigation helped me to even share with my client. Not necessarily, and I know what you're thinking, maybe you're not, but those of you that are out there thinking, no, it wasn't to jack the price up because I knew they wanted the property more. Although that's great for everyone else's bank account, that wasn't great for my soul. And that is truly what I'm about, is how healthy is my soul. No, it was more to let the sellers know that, hey, I think this is a true, genuine person. This is not an investor. They're not going to destroy your home as you knew it. They're going to take it and love it as much, if not more, than you did, because they really find true value in it. So maybe not gouge them so bad and not crush their dream where it becomes a financial nightmare. I guess that's a little bit of where I fell out of the real estate business, was that I was a true negotiator, but I wasn't the business negotiator. And I truly feel that that's coming sort of to light nowadays, is that that wasn't what matters. What matters is bringing two parties together and finding a situation that will work. I really hope we get back to that someday because I really appreciated the business. But the idea of gouging someone and raising the price of a property just because the neighborhood went up or the house 2 minutes ago sold, now all of a sudden your property is worth more. I get that the market and all boats float. I'm not arguing that point. But when it's literally going higher than the stock market, higher than your 401k, and higher than even some offshore investment as far as rate of return, that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the people involved, and it certainly is not sustainable for the market. Yeah. It, I guess I go back to my argument that there is no such thing as a starter home. And I'm probably getting off track here, so I do apologize, but just bear with me for about 2 minutes and let's go through a short history lesson. You know, it was roughly around the end of World War II when we had a thing called the housing boom. And a lot of the men and women that were in service came back home and had some funds saved up because they had been at war. They also had what was called some government assistance known as the GI Bill. So serving your country has its rewards. That being said, they had the ability to borrow some money for a long period of time based on the fact that they were an honorable service person, not necessarily that their financial numbers worked. And this was in a day where we had what was called manual underwriting, which isn't used anymore. We're pretty much in the mode of machines, and the machine either says you can or cannot have something that you want. So you really have to play with the numbers. Nonetheless, we had a thing called a starter home, and that was where it was a basic structure that had all the amenities. There was nothing half about it. It wasn't built shabby, and quite frankly, it was probably some of the best built homes, give or take some of the substances that were used in building. But nonetheless, going into the future, there is no such thing as a starter home. There is no such thing as the first ring of a subdivision, which was usually the certain type of home. And then it graduated to a different type of home. And then the next was the different type of home. And you had all these sectors of a subdivision where you eventually had $500,000 to $1 million homes kind of in the same neighborhood. You could start with the starter home, and honestly, financially, you could work your way up to the $1 million home just by being strategic about owning this property, allowing a little bit of equity to build, selling it, taking that plus your payoff equity that you've gained, and take that and buy to the next neighborhood, to the next bigger house. And then from that, about 5 or 10 years, flip that over, go to the next neighborhood. You gradually work your way up there. There's no gradual anymore because even that, what was a structurally defined as a starter home is $400,000. And then the other homes, I mean, they're just as expensive. So it's all of that market increase in the 5 and 10 minute market increments that we've learned to get adjusted to. Well, quite frankly, isn't a win-win for anybody except for maybe the developer who's developing that property and or the home seller who's selling the property. But I just don't think the home purchaser is in the win-win position. Anyway, I digress. I really hope that someday, somewhere, and maybe it's the advent of 3D printing, that we can finally get back to some level of a starter home, and that's not living in a van down by the river. But what I will promise to you today is in this episode, we'll reveal how to negotiate with confidence, integrity, and empathy. So you'll walk away from agreements. You'll walk away with agreements, not arguments. Negotiation isn't about winning, it's about aligning. See, there's kind of a common misconception. Most think negotiation equals manipulation, as I mentioned earlier. But real negotiation, that's kind of co-creation. And in fact, going back to my previous statement, I would even have conversations with the real estate agent. Hey, did they share with you what they really like about the home? I mean, what's the best feature? Oh, they really like the porch. Boy, that back porch, they said they could stay there 4 seasons. Okay, good. They like the porch. Great. Anything else? No, yeah, the kitchen's nice, but they do want to do something with the bedroom. Okay, great. That was information I could take back to my seller to say, hey, man, that work you did on the porch paid off. I know you were worried about the expense. You could probably get it back, but they're going to do some work to the living room or to the bedroom. So they're trying to balance this thing out. That's kind of where they're sitting at that purchase price. Okay, yeah, we were going to do something to the bedroom too, they would say, but we never got to it. Mutual understanding. See how that's a win-win? It's a conversation. Not a, hey, they really like the porch. Let's raise the price 10 grand. And oh, too bad they don't like the living room or the bedroom. That's bad on them. We loved it. See the tone in that? See the slight negativity or the jagged edges that are being created? Again, co-creation. It's kind of smoothing out those edges. And if there are certain issues that come up, home inspection was always one of them. Well, you'd kind of smooth that out to say, well, the appliances are dated. We were going to change them, but never got to it, and maybe consider a little bit of a discount. Not say, well, they worked for us, and we want another 10 grand just because you don't like something, and you're going to have to spend another 10 grand to put appliances in the home you just bought because the ones we're selling you aren't so great. See, that's again, I just don't understand that mentality. And a lot of agents, and I don't want to disrespect anybody, but honestly, a lot of agents out there were having that mentality. I mean, they had appliances at their home that worked. Why would you expect somebody to suffer through bad appliances and expect them to pay top dollar for bad appliances? I just don't get it. But through reframing the purpose, I found a win-win where both parties left better, not bruised. And it was those simple conversations, those simple understandings, those simple sharings. And again, I know some of you are going, well, that wasn't allegiance to you. No, that was absolutely truthful allegiance to all parties involved because you're talking about, the things that matter. And if it's something like, well, the appliances don't work, oh, don't tell them they're not going to turn them on until later. No, that is fraud. That is fraudulent. It's untruthful. Quite frankly, yeah, it's not what I do. It's not how I did business. I would rather be honest to say, hey, they might not last. So here's two options. One, we can seek a discount so that you have some cash in your pocket to be able to get some. The other option would be maintain what's there, save up for a year, and buy what you want once you figure out what the motif of your kitchen would be. And we'll negotiate a home warranty. So if something does go, it's a lesser expense to replace. See how that's a win-win? Not a, oh, don't tell them about it. Maybe they won't find out. Yeah, that's just not the way to roll. I'm sorry. Don't do that. It's not how do I get my way? It's how do we walk away proud? And I can tell you, quite frankly, that I walked away not only from each transaction, but from that business with pride, with honest pride, that I dealt with everyone, even if they weren't on my team, even if they weren't my direct client, I dealt with them honestly and fairly and ethically. And that is how I feel the best negotiation happens, not through strong arm, not through neglect, not through dishonesty. See, the mirror neurons and tone pacing build rapport. Your psychology, voice, and word, physiology, voice, and word. Well, these can create trust or they can create tension. And as I mentioned earlier, remember that my conversations were curiosity, gentle. Hey, what do your clients like about the home? Or I would ask directly to the clients, gee, what do you like about the home? What is the best feature that this property offers to you? That's not leverage, that was understanding. And understanding would create leverage on a completely different level. The best negotiators ask more than they argue. Part two, 5 principles of powerful negotiation. Prepare with perspective. Know what you want, know what they want, and value most. Remember, as I mentioned, what was it that they valued about the property? And then I would share that. Oh, wow, that's great. Anything you would change? Oh, no, wouldn't change a thing. Everything's great. So it is kind of the perfect property. Yeah. Is there anything you'd change? Possibly anything. there's got to be something off. Maybe the doorbell, the sound of the doorbell, the color of the front door, something simple. And they would be comfortable to finally loosen up and say, yeah, we would change things. So it's not quite the perfect home, but it's the one you like. Yeah. To me, that's valuable information. It shows that they're sacrificing. And to bring that share of sacrifice to my clients, the sellers, well, it let them know, first of all, that, well, the buyers are kind of human. And the buyers do have a checkbook that has limitations. And that they're coming into something that they're not necessarily happy about, but they're going to live with. And I think that human element helped them understand that, yes, they were getting market value, but that someone may have to live in a home for 1 to 5 years to then make it what they want. And I think that puts more of the human element more than the financial element at play. And I've always asked, what problem am I solving for my client? Did they want top dollar? Well, we would usually negotiate beforehand to say, hey, if you want top dollar, make this thing shine like a new penny. Put the new appliances in, spend that extra dollar, because the say 1 to 3,000 in appliances, give or take, that you would spend would be almost a $10,000 return, because also the financial institution looking at this is going to see that the buyer is going to be able to make those monthly payments and not be burdened. I remember some of the financial institutions would ask for the home inspection, especially to see if the home was going to be short in disrepair, that might already show signs of a struggle for the new buyer to make that monthly payment, because they're already having to fix up things that, quite frankly, are broken at the point of sale. So it was always solving the problem, always trying to understand, first of all, what the problem is, and then what's the best way to solve it. And not with that leverage, strong arm negotiation of how to win something over, but just simply to understand that we're all humans and that we all want something. The buyers want it at a good, affordable price that's not going to break their financial bank. And the sellers, they've made some payments and they want some equity that's been naturally built up via the market, not the inflated market. And through building rapport was mirroring body language, matching their pace, and always smiling. Listen for pitching. See, when you're pitching, that usually means that there's a concern. It's an emotional reaction, if you will. When they say, hey, do you think the price is a little too high? Yeah, I think the price is a little too high. That's the emotion. That's the physiology. It's the physical way that they're expressing their concern. They don't want to, but man, that darn thing slips out every time. Rapport before rebuttal. I listened. I learned how to listen, again, from my clients and from sub-clients or alternate clients, meaning the person I wasn't working directly with. When they said they didn't like the bedroom or the living room, I didn't say, well, you could just live with it. No, I didn't rebuttal. I listened. I built rapport. Then relaxed the nervous system, gathered all the information, and then came to the conversation with rebuttal. Rebuttal is good as well, but I came to that conversation with a fully educated mind and fully thought out what it was I was going to say, not just dip the butt and cutting in every time they left a gap in the sentence. Let them finish. And that way you have all the information, because they may say, we don't like the living room, but I think the kitchen's more important. So you're already trying to solve the living room problem when they'll finally, through rapport, divulge to you that might not be the important thing. It's just the one thing because you're standing in it. So see a little bit of how this works. You kind of have to have some patience, and you kind of have to read things a little bit. And you may not get the answer in the first question. You may be 3 to 5 questions, even 10 questions in before you actually start to get that individual to release some more valuable information. And again, it's not mischievous. You're honestly wanting to know, or you should honestly be wanting to know. And this isn't necessarily in real estate, by the way, either. You can apply this in any form of business or sales, is through that conversation, understanding a little bit of what that party is coming to the table with, what they don't have to bring to the table with, and kind of understand where their middle ground is. From there, you pretty much can know whether or not they're flexible. And this is from number 3, ask high value questions. Once you kind of find that middle ground and you understand, well, there's some pain points and there's some, well, it's not going to happen today. Once you sort of find that middle ground, and it may be kind of a pretty wide space, the I should have got this on a plaque somewhere in my office, but it was always my common phrase, which was, what would make this a win for you? Yes, that pause was intentional. See how it had effect? See how you were like, wait a minute, did the podcast stop? See that effect? You stopped for a moment. Yes, stop technique alert, stop technique alert, but be patient and be quiet. Just make that one statement and shut up. They'll tell you what the win is. They'll tell you how to narrow that middle ground even more to really just kind of make it a little easier in these situations. And yeah, you're negotiating big things, but that is a high value question. What's going to make this win? Is it financial? Is it benefits? Hey, if we can negotiate the new appliances, does that make this a win for you? Yeah. Well, it goes back to the same thing. So you spend, 1 to 3, depending on how fancy you want to get, maybe 5 grand in appliances, but you're turning around getting almost 50 grand in equity. I think that's probably a good margin of trade off. Now I know some people are saying, it's no longer their house. No, it's a win. And it's the same thing with business and anything else. Just simply ask, hey, what's going to make this a win for you? What's going to sweeten this deal that you're going to walk away feeling like you got a good deal, that you had a successful transaction? And they'll tell you. Well, they might hem haw around, but again, shut up and be silent. Let them talk. And part of the mirroring is to repeat. So if they kind of ramble on and they're babbling and going on about the same thing, just saying it 5 different ways, repeat that and then be quiet again. So if we do this, that sweetens the deal. You got it. Be quiet again and just wait, because they're either going to agree that that is the deal, even though they said it 5 times, or that 5 times of gyrating through a sentence was them trying to filter out and find the truth. And then the truth comes in the second or third time. Because if they say the second thing is same as the first, they're still kind of hung up on that. And sometimes something will break through that lets you know that it wasn't that, it was something else. And then once you find that, you can kind of hone in on that and narrow the window. Now, you could do this all day long, but the idea is to really focus. And when you start to practice this particular skill, well, you're going to get where you ask those higher value questions. Like, your questions get higher value. Like, first of all, what would make this a win for you? Usually is pretty good. And they're going to tell you because they've thought about it. Maybe even they wrote it down. They were anticipating the question. They're like, what makes this deal work? Well, it's a dollar amount. It's these particular terms. It's whatever. They've thought about it. Trust me. It's when they tell you is when you have that mutual understanding that now they're releasing what they feel is that information. They're kind of showing you their cards, as they say in Vegas. that way, you know, hey, that's a win. So if we can negotiate that, you win. And if we can negotiate that with kind of what I want, then I win. Hence the win-win scenario. And that always worked for me, even with my sellers. So what does a win look like for you? When we sell your home, what is it? That you walk away with a certain amount, that you close by a certain date, that you what's the win? Because it was different for everybody. It wasn't always the money. I had one client that said, "Man, I'm moving. I'm leaving in 30 days. Like job, everything is done. I'm leaving in 30 days. Here's my mark on the calendar. I don't want to be negotiating or doing paperwork or whatever." Man, that adjusted our marketing strategy. And not that I said, "Hey, seller's leaving in 30 days, come buy the house." But that was having that knowledge was when a contract did come on the table, it was like, "Hey, are your financial things in place?" Because that's going to have a lot to do. Can we get a letter that says from the lender that you are going to close on this date and that the client is in good financial standing and that there's no hiccups or extra searches or more documentation or dragging anything out? Because that was important to the seller, not the money. In fact, I want to say there may have even been a reduction in price from them to say, "Hey, if we just drop it like 5 grand and they buy it for this, can they close in 30 days?" And that made all the difference in the world, and everybody won. So it's not always about the money. Don't get hung up on that in any transaction, quite frankly. I mean, it's great, but it's not everything. Because you could have all the money in the world and still walk away from that transaction and go, "Yeah, I just don't feel good about that." See how that works? So it's got to feel good. The money, yeah, it's going to sit in the bank or whatever it is you're going to do with it, but it's not the win all. And if it is, well, maybe we need to talk about that in another episode. Another question I asked that I found that was high value is, what if you had no limitations? What would that look like? What if you had a certain period of time to sell? What if, because it was a unique property, I remember it was about 17 acres in this little valley of Pennsylvania, and it had this roaring river that went through it, and guest houses and multiple houses and boat houses and a pond and an extra garage, and it was gated. I mean, it was just a sweet, sweet oasis, just a magical property. And I remember asking, well, if there's no limitations, or if you had no limitations, what does it look like? He goes, "Man, I don't need to sell this place." He goes, I kind of would like to, but I don't need to." Well, that kind of changed the marketing strategy. Now, yeah, it would have been nice selling it in a very fast fashion, and it was a really highly valued property. But by the same token, they didn't have any limitations. So understanding if there's no limitations, and that even can come from the purchasing side. What if you have no limitations? What's the perfect property look like for you? If you're not held by finances or if you're needing to be in a certain location, what does that look like? And understanding that started to open when I represented buyers to showing them property that was magnificent, because getting there, the travel time didn't matter. Maybe how interesting it was to access didn't matter. Maybe cost didn't matter. And I could show you the most stellar piece of property you have ever seen, with most magnificent views, with access to a water source, such as a river or creek. And that's what I provided. But it was those two questions, is what would make it a win? And if you had no limitations, what would that look like? What's the perfect home look like? That was a big one, because understanding what was perfect to them helped me share and show them things that were perfect, and understanding they're perfect and really going into those, 5 to 10 questions to really understand. Because I could be pretty frank with them to say, Hey, remember how you said you didn't like rough road access? Well, that's got a rough road. Yeah, but I really like that house. Okay. Well, the access is quite interesting. If you're willing to give it a try, because I'm not sure, what rough road access looks like to you. We've seen a few of them, and then they start to understand that, well, their idea of rough road access was a little off. And then when I took them to that property that had that rough road access, that was a step above some other rough road accesses that we stumbled upon, they realized the property was more important than the access, and they loved the ambiance that was given at such a location. And then they started to change. But again, it was asking those 3 to 5, sometimes 10 questions to understand specifically what the limitations are and creating the idea that there really wasn't any limitations. So, what if you had no limitations? What is it that you could do today? What does freedom look like for you? What does success look like for you? Again, I'm kind of harping on real estate in this particular episode, but this is for anything, a win-win. Say it's your career. Say it's what you want to do in life. Say it's your relationships. It's all the same template. I hope you see that in this episode. It's all the same template. When you're dating someone, ask them, what does life look like with no limitations? That's going to tell you a lot about someone. What does a win look like for you? What's the perfect partner look like for you? And if they start babbling on that you have to have blonde hair and you're like, my hair's not blonde, it's superficial. Again, dig deeper. You'll find out hair's not the thing. It's just the thing they think is the first thing as they stumble through. And again, having a conversation like we're having, maybe over a glass of wine and just being casual. Now you're building rapport. I want to caveat just one glass of wine because multiple glasses of wine could lead to something else. And this podcast is not going to be responsible for that kind of behavior. But you know what I'm saying, right? You understand that building that rapport and having those conversations with what most would consider maybe hard questions really is just simple and just asking, being intuitive, inquisitive, if you will, to just learning more about someone. Always seeking knowledge. Hello. Frame and then flex. See, anchoring is key. Start with the strong vision and then show flexibility. For example, when I would share what my usual services were, but I'm also open to structuring a based on, whatever their relationship creates. Most people had a schedule where they were available only on weekends. Well, weekends are tough for me, but if you can commit maybe a good weekday to offer to me, maybe on a Monday, and sometimes that was a holiday, so it was a tough break for me. But if they could commit to a weekday that hopefully wasn't busy as far as showing and offered me a little bit more time, then I could give that time to them. And that was a win-win value for both of us because they got my time and expertise and felt good about a successful purchase as a buyer. But if they pretty much were stuck on the weekends, man, I only had about an hour or two because either that or you'd have to wait in line for several months to get on that weekend schedule. But I was available on weekdays as well and pretty flexible. So, man, if you could commit a weekday to me, I guarantee you we're going to see some property. We're going to see a handful of property, and you're going to be able to get fully educated on what the market offered. Because I was in a market not only licensed in 4 states, but that covered the mid-Atlantic area, which was about 2 hours west of Washington, D.C. And this encompassed Northern Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. Now, there's a lot of terrain going on there. You've got water access property, waterfront property, you have mountaintop property, you have neighborhood property, metropolitan property, urban property, and rural property, not to mention farmland and oases in the valleys of Pennsylvania. There's a lot of coverage here. So if you just tell me you're looking for somewhere to kind of visit in the summertime, you'd like to maybe splash in the water or walk in the woods, man, we got to narrow that down because we'll circumvent about 4 states trying to figure it out. So, first of all, what state would you like to live in or this property to be in? Because many people lived in Maryland and had recreational property in West Virginia. Nonetheless, it's, yeah, see, you had to ask questions or you'd find yourself running around with them and getting those questions answered for you through a lot of time and energy when a simple sit down to understand how to narrow that gap allowed me to then effectively show them things that actually made sense and what they were looking for. Because there's really nothing worse than a client getting back in the car and saying, yeah, just don't like that one. Ah, missed time and energy. So to make it a win-win, ask those questions and find out up front. Same thing with relationships. Be upfront and ask those questions. Because trust me, overcoming the shyness of asking that question up front is going to win you over from a whole lot of pain later on to realize someone is really not who they said they were, or really not who you thought they were, or you start to learn who they are. And well, then now it's pretty expensive because you've got some separation issues that you're going to have to deal with. And if you have a lot of stuff, well, that involves a third party and they don't work for free either. So, yeah, it's far better to just get over your shyness and ask those questions than to find out later that things weren't what you wanted. So, number 5, you also want to walk with confidence. Detachment is power, and be willing to walk away. See, when you bring confidence and options, you're shifting the energy. And it's not necessarily calling someone's bluff, but just be like, you know what? Maybe this isn't a good deal. Maybe, okay, we'll get off the real estate for a minute. This is a good thing for relationships. Sometimes confidence is walking away and just knowing, hey, it's not working. Yeah, you've got 1 out of the 5 attributes that I like in someone, because we all have soul attractiveness, right? There's certain things we just innately like about people. And that's kind of what attracts us to them. But if you're only seeing 1 out of the 5 and you're kind of thinking, well, can I live with just 1? I'd really like at least 3. 5 would be better. If you're already having that conversation with confidence, walk away and just be honest and say, hey, I just don't see this as working out. This isn't off to a good start. I don't see that there's middle ground. We can be individuals, we can be in relationships, and we meet each other constantly in that middle ground. But if you're not finding that middle ground, which is those 5 soul connecting attributes, well, you got to really seriously ask yourself. Because, see, at the end of the day, that 1 isn't going to get you through. When there's tough times, when there's financial times, when there's emotional times, maybe even a loss of a family member, when you really need that shoulder to cry on, is that 1 attribute going to be enough for you? Or would you prefer someone that has the 5 that you're truly attracted to? I can tell you a little bit from experience is that 5 is better. And honestly, 6 is better. If you can find some more for me, I would greatly appreciate it. But 5 is the key. Because if you're settling for 1, it's not going to work. Just have that confidence to know this isn't the one and that there's someone else out there. This is also part of finding your soul's purpose. Once you know your soul's purpose and you know what you're built for, that has that a level of innate confidence already that tells you to stand up for your 5 and to be sure of your 5 and to know what you want from your partner's 5. There's a great book I'll share with, and I don't get anything for it, but it's called the 5 Languages of Love. Love language. Yeah, it's the 5 languages of love. Those are important because it's knowing, first of all, what your first is, could be different than someone else's first. And so understanding your partner's first, but also understanding what those five soul connections are in connection with the love language, that's a huge part of it. You have to have that connection, and it shouldn't be hard. Relationships should be easy. And I've always been frustrated when I talk to some people that have been married for 20, 30, 15 years. And they're like, yeah, we just always kind of didn't ever gel. Why did you wait so long? And I'm guilty of it too. But it was like kind of always hoping it'll get better. And I can share with you that it doesn't get better. And the relationship doesn't build on just 1 point. You really need 5 points. 4, sacrificial. 3, I'm already telling you, I'm already going to forecast some trouble. 5 is really what you want. You really want those 5. And by having those, now the relationship is easy and carefree. And it doesn't seem like it's a struggle. It doesn't seem like it's a trial. It doesn't seem that you're having to constantly negotiate. And when you can wake up every day with a partner and feel like you're always winning and they're always winning, and it's almost an effortless win, well, that's the golden crown of negotiation right there. And it's not sacrifice. Let me be clear. It's that you both are kind of after something in your own individual way. And there is that 5 points of mutual ground that have some space between them. That's what you want. That's the 5 connection. Because if you're dealing with 1 and this is what you've got to work with, it's not a lot of room to connect. So when those adverse things in life happen, you need that middle ground to always be able to come to. And if it's a narrow passage, sad to say, you're most likely going to miss it every single time. Part 3, negotiation scenarios and practice. Examples you can try. Rise at work. Lead with impact. Frame as mutual value. Client fee. Present a tiered solution and let them choose. That's actually a whole nother episode, is the 3. Give your client 3 options. They'll choose one. It's usually going to be the middle one. So it's almost predictable because the one is kind of too high and the other one, well, nobody wants to be at the bottom. Nobody wants to take the sacrificial. So they're going to always go to the middle. And they're always going to take the one that, well, predictably looks manageable and that's average. Some people, there's a few of you out there that are like, I don't want to be average. And so you're always going to take the top tier. And you're going to learn a little something from that, as you most often do, but it's okay. Like a client that I remember talking to, we'll get back to real estate, was, oh, well, I want to do it this list price. Well, that's kind of high because your property doesn't necessarily match. Yeah, but I want that price. I like that price. Okay. Well, recognize that being at that price is going to be longer on the market because all the other things below your home, statistically speaking and financially speaking, the sales price, all of those have to sell before someone's going to find value in your property. Okay, I'm willing to wait. Man, I think 5 months went by that property sat on the market, maybe even 6 months by the time we closed. And they were pretty confident. They were like, well, we got the price we wanted. And I said, you sure did. Can I ask you, did you feel like it was worth the wait? No. Those extra 2 months were kind of tough, but I still feel good about getting the money. But I agree the 2 months, yeah, having the money sooner would have been better. I'm not sure what was going on personal because we really didn't get into that particular conversation as to what you're going to do the money for because it kind of went weird and silent. But nonetheless, taking that top tier does have its sacrifice as well. And just being aware of that. I always shared that. Just understand that the higher demand means more time on the market. Unless you have a stellar property, one of a kind, and even that, it becomes a bit of a unicorn where, you got to find really the right buyer. So it can be priced right. It can be a great property with almost no negotiations in its future, but yet now you got to find the right buyer that's going to appreciate that property. Family discussions. Use feel, fact, and future language. I feel this way because this way. And I'd love if we could do it this way. When you express, first of all, your feelings and you express a small fact concluded with what you would like the future to look like, well, that kind of gives the same thing. It gives someone a choice, the recipient of that statement, to say, oh, I understand how you feel. The fact I may or may not be able to argue with, and I see the future you see, but my future would be altered a little bit this way. And I think if we alter the future this way, I think you'll feel, based on the facts, that it's a win for both of us because you've altered it with a small point of perspective. Does that make sense? Let's do an example. Irregardless of the partner, honey, I feel like we need a new car. The fact is, the car that we currently have, well, it spends more time in the shop than on the road. And I see our future as, well, having something that is dependable, and I have something that's going to allow us to go on road trips, and I see ourselves, maybe camping with a particular vehicle. To bring that around, maybe the other party is more financially driven. And they say, well, I understand how you feel. The car does spend a lot of time in the shop. And the fact is, yeah, we really could use a more reliable and dependable vehicle. But the future I see is being able to fly to vacations instead of driving to vacations. And therefore, if we could save some money in both ways to get a new car, meaning put some money towards it, as well as have a level of freedom to save money to go on an airplane and go to destinations unknown. See, sharing that future with a win and a win. So how do you feel in that conversation? I feel like I'd win, right? Okay, so if we extended buying a car for, say, 3 months and really honed in on saving for this and for that, then it's a mutual sacrifice and there's a win or a payoff for both. You end up both with a new car and you end up enjoying some really great vacations together in some unknown destinations. So a little bit of mirroring and a little bit of sharing those three things: feel, fact, and future. There was an instance where it didn't happen it happened sort of at the appropriate time because life is happening for us, not to us. But I also rely a lot on intuition and how I feel at the moment. And at this particular moment, it was the end of a really long, trying day. And I I recognized that I wasn't at my best for making any level of a decision. And I remember the timing was interesting that it came upon me. And because I had instigated things, I was gearing for a promotion, if you will. And it finally came to me after several interviews and negotiations and everything else that the position came to me. Well, quite frankly, about three different positions because I was like interviewing 6 to 8 different departments. And the one came to me, and the presentation just wasn't there. And the person, I was honest with them. I said, well, first of all, I'm not going to make a decision right now. I would like 24 hours and I will get back to you. The second part, and again, because I exercise this so many times, I don't beat around the bush. It doesn't take 3 to 5 times, up to 10 to ask questions. I'm going to tell you straight up front. And I said, at this particular moment, I almost feel like it's a hard no because I don't feel like you're my ally. You're my advocate. You are offering me a position, and I don't just feel like your position in leadership is going to take me to the next level. I just don't feel that right now. So, although I'm not going to make a decision, I'm going to give you an opportunity to convince me. Maybe I'm just not feeling a certain way, or maybe you're not emitting that particular energy that I need to feel. So I'm going to give you whatever time you need to convince me that getting on board with you is my best option because I have some options. I didn't say that to them, but I was just like, hey, let me know that you're my best option. And they kind of hemmed and hawed and danced around and was like, well, they do this and that and this. And you know what? I still didn't feel it. And I knew at that moment it was really a hard no. But I already committed with a statement that said, I'm not going to make a decision for 24 hours. I will get back to you tomorrow. I wanted to sleep on it. I wanted to think about it with a fresh mind, with a new day, if you will. And I walked away. I wrote it down on paper. I gave it a hard no. And I took another option. Now, I can share with you that that option didn't necessarily pan out the way I wanted to either, but it was the option I felt better about based on the information that was given to me. And I know it's may sound slightly confusing. I'm still confused because some of that leadership stability and levels by which it lied still don't seem very structured to me. So it was just kind of an interesting position that I was in at the time. But I share with you this is that if you don't feel it, don't move on it. Don't commit to it thinking things will get better. But I can share with you that if you're curious and if you have a level of empathy and you open the door to the other option that you walked away from that has that potential for growth, for sales, well, then take that. But have the confidence to know you got to be strong and to walk away and to know that that better deal is out there for you. You know, as I've always said, life's happening for us, not to us. And I believe that certain instances like this where we're given, you hear that, given the opportunity to walk away is part of our education process as a human being. It's part of finding our soul's purpose and building the strength of our soul and understanding more about the life by which we are living, not anyone else. This is our life to live. And so I think many of these times we are tested to see, are we building that muscle to walk away for the strength of our better selves? Or are we just being grateful enough to say, oh, this is the best opportunity I can get and there's nothing else available? I think if you hold strong to the opportunities that are always ahead of you, as well as striving to get those opportunities of working a little harder or asking those questions to your boss or next level person that would, say, hey, if you did a little bit more of this, this will show that you're promotable or that you're eager to grow in the company or that you know more than your role or that you're practicing good leadership. Anything like that you can do that's going to put you in the position to be able to say, yes, I'm grateful for this opportunity, or no, I just don't think this is a good fit for me, and walking away and can still continue to strive, exercising those leadership qualities, knowing that there's that better option ahead of you. That's confidence. And that's living your best life, not giving up. So let's recap. The best negotiations are built on clarity, curiosity, and mutual rapport. Prepare, listen, and align. Remember to flex and close with confidence, whether that's to move forward in a win-win situation or to feel like you might have to step back and not play this round. And that's also a win-win. It's a win for you and it's a win for them. Because quite frankly, if you were to take a position and be unhappy, now it's not really a win for them. Although you have a job and you're winning because you're getting some income, but technically they're losing because they're getting just a disgruntled employee that's showing up 50%. So I give to you this call to action is to download the Win-Win Negotiation Planner from the show notes. Share a negotiation win or an insight this week using hashtag WinWin with Adam and tag at Ask Adam Live. If you want to be a powerful negotiator, lead with listen, not with leverage. When trust enters the conversation, the possibilities expand. Now let's go out and make it a great day, all of us, with win-win negotiation.